Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of I've Been Playing, where today we're talking about Evil Dead the game. Evil Dead the game is perhaps obviously a game inspired by and influenced by the Evil Dead movie franchise and associated things, much like how the Friday the 13th game was influenced by that series of films. And similar to the Friday the 13th game, this is also an asymmetrical horror. This time, however, you have 4 survivors who are trying to take down the Kandarian demon, and you have one player who is playing as said demon. When you play as the survivors, you can pick from several characters, many of whom are of course Ash, and your goal is to first find a map, then find a dagger and some pages of the Necronomicon, then you have to defeat the enemies protecting the Necronomicon, and then you have to destroy the Necronomicon. So there's a long series of things you have to do in order to win as a survivor, and of course if you're playing as the demon, you are trying to prevent that from happening. The thing about this is that the demon is constantly gaining power and leveling up, so of course, besides having a million things to do, it gets harder the farther you go and the longer you play, as you may expect. I think matches are 30 minutes, there is a timer at the top of the screen, and the more the demon does things and influences the survivors and scares them and spawns things to attack them and specifically gets them injured and things like that, the more powerful it grows, so the more they can do and the harder they can make it for the survivors. Now, I haven't played a lot, considering I technically had most of the weekend to play, somewhere between 4 and 6 hours, so not nearly as much as I could have, admittedly, but in my experience so far, it's basically impossible to win as a survivor, and it only depends on how good the demon is, how quickly you get killed. Even when I myself was playing as a demon, I won, and I've never been good at that side of an asymmetrical horror. I've never played it very much, but I've also never been good at it when I've tried. Granted, I did win very close to the end of the matches that I played in as the demon, but I did end up leveling up enough that I wiped them out before they could finish their goals. Despite that though, I found being the demon frustrating, which is why I don't play that side of an asymmetrical horror very often, so I don't think that's going to be the side of the game I play. I wasn't a big fan of being Jason in Friday the 13th, or the killer in what little I've played of Dead by Daylight, so it's not really surprising to me. I just prefer the cooperative nature and the more interesting gameplay, in my opinion, of being on the other side of the game. And it feels more rewarding to win on that side, especially since it is typically more difficult. That being said, obviously, it is extremely difficult to be a survivor in this game. It is a very difficult game, in my opinion. There's a lot of stuff going on, a lot of things you have to keep in mind, and since you pretty much have to work together so that your fear meter stays low and you remain unpossessed, because the demon can possess those whose fear is high enough, and then they attack the other players, it can be very hard to play quote-unquote solo in a group of randoms, all of whom are possibly also playing solo, or if they're working together themselves, don't really care about their teammates, and it can be very hard to know what they're thinking, especially if it doesn't look like they're playing the objectives. It can also make it a little bit difficult because it is cross-play, across everything as far as I'm aware, and while it works really well, and surprisingly well considering, and it's really smooth most of the time from what I've seen, it does add an extra layer of complication and separation from your fellow teammates. So as I said, I was only playing a little bit of this game, mostly on Friday, and there's a lot of content from the Evil Dead franchise to enjoy. I myself have only seen the original, the 2013 remake, and Evil Dead 2, but there is still plenty that I can enjoy or understood. Obviously, you're going to get a lot more out of this if you've seen more of the franchise or have watched them multiple times, which is also something I haven't done, but it's still enjoyable regardless. Bruce Campbell and several of the other actors have lent their voice to the game, and when you play as the demon, you move around in that very quick, sharp, spastic way the camera in the film did, and that's just the surface of the references that exist in the game to enjoy. In addition to the multiplayer portion, which is of course the bulk of the game, there are also a series of solo missions you can undertake that are based on each of the different installments in the series. The first is based off of Evil Dead 2, and it is hard. It is very hard. All of this game is, in my opinion, quite difficult. You have to scavenge a lot, which I suppose makes sense, and it's true in multiplayer as well that you have to scavenge and it's difficult, but at least you have other players. But even in the missions, it seems a bit sparse and stingy with health items in particular, and you can lose health very, very quickly if you start getting attacked. You have to make sure to explore every single building, which I suppose makes sense, but even doing that, the stuff that you have to find, or you want to find, or you want to have, like weapons and health specifically, those items seem very few and far between. If I had one criticism of the game, it would be that it seems extremely hard, especially when playing as a survivor, because I have never seen the survivors win a match ever, which I suppose does make a kind of sense because you would expect the demon to be pretty powerful, but it seems really, really skewed in favor of the demon in terms of sheer power and available upgrades and just all of the stuff you can spawn and do and interact with in the environment to influence the people playing as survivors. Now, this is surely something that will improve as you level up the different characters and just generally become more familiar with the game because it's only been out a weekend. You're going to be slightly familiar with it, but you're not going to have learned all of the tricks yet. So this is something that will probably improve as people play more, but it is potentially a little bit off-putting for some people if they're just coming in fresh. Even after just a first weekend of people having practice with it, it can be hard to get into. There's a lot to keep in mind, and there's a lot of tasks that you have to keep track of pretty much at all times. But if you are a fan of Evil Dead or asymmetrical horror games, or both, you are sure to enjoy this one. As I said, it runs really well. From what I can tell, it's really stable, especially for the amount of cross-play technical nonsense that has to occur for cross-play to happen. It's impressive how stable it is. It's really fun, but it is really difficult, at least as you're starting out, especially. And I think if you want to get into it and learn it, now is probably the time to do so before people really know what they're doing in the game. Most people, I'm sure there are some out there already. But I would suggest getting into it now. It's also not that expensive. It's not a full price game necessarily unless you buy the season pass. I think it's $30 or $40, not too bad. And it's a fun addition to your catalog if you enjoy this type of thing. But that's been my experience in this first weekend of the game. Have you played this one for yourself yet, or are you waiting? Let me know down in the comments down below. As well as how you're finding it if you have been playing it. And any hints, tips, tricks that you've found, put them there as well, because I'm sure we'll all need them. Leave a like if you enjoyed this, and if you're not subscribed yet, consider subscribing. I do one of these every Monday and a whole bunch of other stuff on my channel you can check out, and I'll see you next time.